Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars. SoundCartel. You might be doing really well, but do you remember what you're doing it for, or who you're doing it for? Sometimes it's only when you stop, strip it all back, and start again, focused on the real purpose of your business, that you can truly be successful. From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Even at an early age, John Wood was busy making businesses. From selling nasturtium flowers at the age of 5, he started a comic book swap shop. He sold insurance and he ran a delicatessen. That was before his early 20s, when he bought his first caravan, and WA-based Fleetwood Corporation was born, the largest integrated company of its type in Australia. But then, in his mid-40s, he stopped, sold up and walked away. Why? John was seriously questioning what business was all about. Had we forgotten the real reason why we were in business? To be of service to our customers rather than to ourselves. John went on to transform his way of thinking. It comes down to realising that our conditioning from birth can be highly limiting, he says. Strip away all the certainties you've grown up to believe in, and a whole new world of possibilities will open up. It's all in his book, The Business of Possibility, Reimagining Your Organisation. Yes, he says, sometimes you do need to make tough calls. Take that deli he ran all those years ago. But as he tells Heather Dawson, the real essence of business comes down to service.
Delivering the promise to the client, to the customer, is the key. And you may not be aware of it, but the 5 previous owners of that deli had all gone broke. And we took it on. That was my father and myself. And back in those days, it was doing, I think it was £180 a week, of which I think it was 120 of it or 110 of it was credit. And of course, it was a it had a lot of people on welfare in the area, and they didn't pay their bills, and the people felt they had to give credit to have a business. And it occurred to us that we wouldn't give credit at all, and that it would be painful for a while because people would go elsewhere. But if we could stick it out, they'd get into debt elsewhere and then come back and pay cash. Well, within a year, the business was doing £1,000 a week, and we had no credit. And people who were very cross with us initially were very appreciative because we had this very, very outstanding little delicatessen. And so that was about delivering the promise and sometimes being, I don't know if it was harsh, but we made a wise decision that really worked for the common good because they didn't get into hock.
Well then, with the Perth deli behind you at the age of 22, I believe you were pretty young still, with just $1,000 in savings, you purchased a second-hand caravan for $100. And that was the start of Fleetwood Caravans, which was going to become the largest company of its type in Australia. So tell us about that and the secrets of that success.
Well, I sold the deli and I went on a trip up north, and I came back to Perth, and I put an advert in the newspaper saying that I could do anything and that I was a good person to employ. So I put this advert in for a job. And interestingly, I had a lot of responses. And one of them was from a company in Perth that sold and primarily hired caravans. I went out and presented myself, and Mr. Bauer, the manager, said, "When can you start?" And I said, "Right now." And he says, "That's what I like to hear." and so I started. But I found out that they'd only put me on for the Royal Show, to man the Royal Show, and then I was going to be put off. And that they hadn't sold any caravans for the 3 months prior to me joining. Well, I sold caravans at the show, which was unusual in those days. And I was there for 5 months and sold 44 caravans and did a great job. But they weren't going anywhere. There was no future there for me. So one evening I decided I was going to leave. That was a Friday night, and a Saturday morning I went out to the Empire Games Village where there was a little caravan. It was not $100 actually, it was £100 in those days. Yes.
Right.
That's right. And I purchased this little caravan, and I invited my dad if he'd like to join me in this new venture, which he did. And we renovated that and then sold it. It took us several weeks to do it, and it worked out that we'd earned 2 6 per hour each on our labour, but it was a great start, and we sold this beautiful little caravan, all renovated, and that was the start.
Wow. Well, then you went on to caravan parks and park homes and lifestyle villages. It was quite an empire, wasn't it?
It was, of its type, it was the largest in Australia. We also had developed an insurance broking company because when I left school and got a job at 15, I worked in an insurance company, and it seemed like a good idea to sell insurance on the caravans we sold, and we set up a broking company, which became the biggest of its type in Australia, interestingly too. And we had repairs and maintenance, and we had accessory shops, and we set up camping stores. And so it was a very diversified organisation, and it was vertically and horizontally integrated. We were importers and wholesale distributors, so we did all sorts of things.
Do you think that one of the reasons for your success with that whole caravan camping lifestyle village enterprise was that you were prescient about the future and what people were going to want into the future?
Well, it certainly seemed that, from working with modern caravans and that brief experience, that it had a big future. But it just seemed like a nice industry. People enjoy caravanning. And we did things that were quite different. We were selling the idea of the great outdoors, and it was called Fleetwood Freedom. And we were the first company to go on TV with lifestyle advertisements, selling the concept. So we were very good for the industry in WA, and I think other people sort of followed our lead in other states. So yes, it was clear that there was a big future. Never did I imagine, however, it would go crazy like it has with COVID-19. And, the industry has just boomed amazingly because people not travelling overseas are buying recreation vehicles and travelling at home.
Well, at the age of, 47, after you'd publicly listed it and built it up into this big enterprise, you walked away.
Yes.
So why did you walk away, John?
Back in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, there was that sort of boom and bust. Things would go strongly and then we'd have a recession. They'd go strongly, we'd have a recession. And so it was really tough. The company needed more capital. And I went to a very well-known financial man in Perth, a man called John Poynton, and said, look, this is a good business, we've got good people, but I've had enough. There's other things that I want to do with my life. And he said, okay. And he found a major investor in the eastern states, and they bought me out, and the rest is history. The company went from strength to strength.
But that, for you, John, it leads to the next chapter in your life, culminating in your embrace of possibility, with a capital P.
Yes, that's right.
So what happened? Did you get a bit disillusioned?
Business is tough. There's some really great people in business, and there's some sharks, people that aren't in it for anything other than extracting as much as they can from it. And my philosophy was about delivering the promise to the customer. But that's what I think business needs to do, because it's got a bad reputation. A lot of people do not trust businesses, and business serve a very, very important, very useful function. They get goods delivered to the customer at the lowest possible price. So I'm a capitalist. I'm not a left-wing person, but I don't believe what operates today is capitalism. I think it's corporatism, and I stumbled across an approach which is the approach that I work with today with individuals, young entrepreneurs, with businesses. I've worked with large corporations, the largest being the British Broadcasting Corporation. I throw that in because it's people know the BBC. And so I talk to people about the state of mind that we need to be in to deliver the promise and to see possibility, to not have that short-termism, but to have that longer view to build a company, to win the favour and support of your customers long-term. So that's what I do, Heather.
Your book, The Business of Possibility, tell us more about possibility, because is it much more than just being, open-minded and more receptive to ideas of ways to grow?
It is. We're conditioned from the time we leave the womb, and a lot of our conditioning is unhelpful. I was fortunate that my mother was an incredibly sweet person and a wonderful shop assistant. She would be working in those days behind the counter, and she was so nice to the customers. I had conditioning from my father as well, and he was a tough nut, very bad-tempered man. He was lucky he married Mum. So I had this mixture of being bad-tempered but being in service to the customer. I was good with the customer and I wasn't so good with our staff. I was a benevolent dictator. So I discovered it was just the way I'd been conditioned. And it changed, it transformed how I was, and that I needed to be kind with everybody, not just the customer. It's understanding that beyond the conditioned mind, there exists possibility, and that our conditioned mind, by definition, is limited. Once we have an experience of possibility, our conditioned mind, if you like, is upgraded, is refurbished, is improved.
So how can embracing possibility, in your meaning of possibility, work in any business to improve it?
Well, you're looking at your business with fresh eyes. You're not looking at it. Whereas you look through your eyeballs at your business, all bets are off. This is a new opportunity to make all sorts of improvements throughout the business, and it could be to do, and it would obviously have to do with customer service. It might be breadth and depth of range. It could be introducing new products. It could be changing your business. It could be, it's about reinvention and being free to see possibility rather than being locked in to what we've seen up until that point in time.
That was John Wood, author of The Business of Possibility, Reimagining Your Organisation. It's the sequel to John's first book, Possibility, A State of Mind. You can find out more about John's work at therealmofpossibility.org.au. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.